I'd love to know where you're all at. I'm in Boston and we are getting ready for a super sweltery day. I hope that you are a little cooler than we might be. I'm seeing Long Island and DC. You're probably just as hot. Maine, France. I love when people are in other countries, Germany, South Africa, Portugal. At the end of your day, tiling in, I love it. Ohio,
Like the
Norway, Texas.
like the World Cup lineup.
Yeah. I know Scotland, Boston's love the Scots and the Norwegians in particular. We had so much fun when they were here.
The Tartan Army takeover of Boston
Hmm.
Yeah.
was quite a spectacle.
Hey, Jeff and
Cones are
Shane,
still
I
in the
don't think I
statue.
know where you're at. Where are you at?
Both in Boston.
Okay, you're both there. Okay, so
Hmm.
you're right with me then, down the street
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
probably.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, I see you're in the office, Jeff.
Hmm.
Yeah. Give people another minute or two. While we're doing this, I'd love for you all to be thinking about like if you know what ChatGPT says about your brand, if you know what Perplexity says about you. And I'm not talking about like what your website says, but what AI says when people ask about you. If you have any idea, that's what we're talking about today. All right, I think we are good to go. I am Crystal King. I am a senior evangelist at HubSpot Academy. You might be familiar with me because I am the face of our social media certifications. I was in our digital marketing certification. I'm in a few of the videos in our new AEO certification. And I also have a couple other courses. I have a series of videos on SEO in the age of AI and some critical thinking videos. And I'm getting ready to introduce critical thinking for marketers in the age of AI. So, how do you think critically when it comes to AI and building your business? And that will be out in the next month. I'm going to turn it over to Shane, and you can tell us who you are.
Sure. Nice to meet everyone. My name is Shane. I am a manager on our solution engineering team here at HubSpot. I've been here at HubSpot for the past 8 years, working both pre and post sale. So super excited to be here today talking about AEO. It feels like when I was starting at HubSpot, we were like deep in the weeds of inbound and the inbound methodology. So really excited, especially to kind of see this evolution coming into play, especially over the past 6 to 8 months in particular. Jeff, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Great. So I am Jeff. I'm lucky enough to be on Shane's team as a solutions engineer at HubSpot. Similar to Shane as well, been on the pre and post sales side at HubSpot, coming up on 5 years now with the organization. And yeah, really excited to see how the platform's continuing to evolve and guide you all through this next big phase and how to get discovered.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. All right. Today we're going to be covering a few different things. I saw in the chat that somebody was asking if they've learned about AEO Grader, if this is going to be different. This is a deeper dive. We're going to show you something even cooler than AEO Grader, and I think AEO Grader is pretty cool. We're going to talk about the status search. We're going to talk about HubSpot AEO. Jeff and Shane are going to give you a demo of this tool, and then we're going to talk best practices, resources, and leave you with some next steps for how you can boost AEO yourself. And so your one thing to know is that your audio and video, you've probably already realized this, they're disabled, but you can use the chat. Please share your reactions, your thoughts, hype us up. We love that. We are definitely sending a recording. We'll send that within 24 hours of the event, and we'll give you a copy of the slide deck as well. And so we're going to try to address as many questions as possible. Please use the Q&A tab, not the chat to ask your questions. We will try to pay attention to chat, but just honestly, when we're like in the moment, it's a bit hard. So the Q&A tab will be helpful because we have somebody behind the scenes, our colleague Danielle, who is really helping us organize that. And then we're going to make sure that you give us which part of the product you're asking in your question. All right, excellent. Um, so let's talk about the state of it all. So for the last 20 years, the playbook for SEO was pretty straightforward. Buyers searched on Google, they clicked through to pages, and the brand with the best ranking won. So marketers totally understood the game, but that game has completely changed. Buyers are now asking ChatGPT and Gemini and Perplexity all of the questions they used to ask of Google. And instead of a list of links, you're getting a single answer with recommended brands. You don't have those 10 blue links anymore. And so if your brand is not in that answer from that LLM, the large language model like Perplexity or ChatGPT, then you are just not going to be found. You're never going to know if your deal would have happened if you had been mentioned or not. It'd just be missing. And so that's the thing, though, that's actually cool about being mentioned in an answer engine is that buyers who arrive there are not just browsing, who the people that come to your website after they've received an answer where you've been mentioned, they're ready to buy. So it's an opportunity. They've already done their research and they've been told what their best options are. And that's a fundamentally different and much higher value buyer. And so, a question for you all. Have you noticed a change in your organic traffic over the last year? I'm guessing you have. I'm an author on the side, and I can tell you that I have definitely seen a hit in my traffic from SEO in the past. Yes, yes, yes. Like, I mean, I could have predicted this. We're all kind of in that same spot, right? So here's what's actually happening when you ask ChatGPT or Perplexity or one of these other engines a question about your category. First, they type a prompt, and then the answer engine goes out and they pull citations from across the web, your site, but also they love Reddit threads, YouTube videos, competitor comparison pages, review sites, industry blogs, affiliate content, all of that. And then what it will do is it will synthesize a response with recommended brands and cited sources. And in fact, your own website typically makes up less than 8% of those citations. The vast majority of what the influences the AI answer is content that lives somewhere else. And that's why AEO is a really different discipline. You need a multi-channel presence, not just a strong website. And so that's what separates HubSpot. We don't just tell you what your visibility gaps are, but we give you recommendations on how to close those gaps, and the tools to do it are right inside your HubSpot platform. And so the way that it works is that first you spot a visibility gap with AEO. Then you'll get a recommendation of how to close that gap and how to easily create content using HubSpot's AI blog or Content Remix. And then you're going to amplify that across LinkedIn, Reddit, TikTok without ever leaving the platform. And then you can score, route, and nurture those high intent visitors who arrive there because of that new content. So this is like a complete marketing motion. It's a loop and it runs on one platform and it's powered by your own CRM data. And so a lot of teams that are doing this now are doing this with a whole bunch of disparate tools, a bunch of connectors instead of in one place. And so that's something we need to think about. What do you actually do about this? And so that's where AEO comes in, answer engine optimization. AEO is the practice of improving how often and how accurately your brand appears in AI generated answers. Just as SEO is about ranking in search results, AEO is about being part of the answer when someone asks ChatGPT, Perplexity, or Gemini a question. But they require completely different tactics. SEO is about your website, and it's still important, but AEO is about your entire presence across the web. It includes Reddit, includes YouTube, review sites, all of those that we just talked about. Answer engines are going to pull from all of that. And the marketers who figure this out now are in the same position as those who figured out SEO in 2008. The early movers build compounding advantages that are really hard to displace later. It gives you a huge leg up. And so HubSpot AEO gives you three things: a clear view of how your brand shows up across every major answer engine, a strategy for improving that visibility, and the tools to execute without ever having to leave HubSpot. And a lot of AEO tools will just hand you a report and wish you luck. But HubSpot will close that loop, and the insight and the action are living in the exact same place. So I am going to turn this over now to my friends and I'll let them walk you through what this means.
Awesome. Thank you, Crystal. Yours truly is up now. Before we're going to jump right into HubSpot, I actually want to take us on a little bit of a journey. And I want to start where your buyers are likely starting today. And think of all of us as a consumer. It's honestly, if you're Shane Ryan, you're searching best iced coffee near me, pretty standard. So today, when someone's researching any kind of new product, new vendor, new solution, they're not clicking through 10 blue links and comparing websites manually. We've already heard that has changed. And more, what we're seeing is folks are asking one of these answer engines. They're asking ChatGPT, they're asking Gemini, they're reading these AI overviews in Google. And quite honestly, they're getting a synthesized answer before they're ever even visiting anyone's website. Now, I think that shift matters because buyers really aren't just finding information differently, they're actually forming a short list differently. And so this section up here is actually the new, let's call it the new battleground. And this is where answer engines are summarizing the market, just as Crystal was talking about, pulling from a variety of different sources, and then deciding which brands, which products, maybe which perspectives deserve to be included here. And I think we all know the traditional SEO game was rank high, you earn the click, you're getting someone on your site, and that's still matters. It's not that that's unimportant. SEO is not dead. I've heard that a couple times, and I promise this webinar today is not a tiny funeral or something for SEO. But the point is AEO is different. And it really is about whether your brand is included in these answers before anyone is ever clicking on anything. So if I scroll down, you'll see obviously the traditional organic search results. This is the SEO world, most of us know pretty well. But the important distinction here is that the brands and sources that are actually cited in the AI generated answer here are not the same brands that rank at the top of organic search. So you'll see HubSpot is here in the AI surfaced answer, but our website, as you scroll into organic, is nowhere to be found. So the important takeaway there is that your existing SEO strategy does not automatically guarantee you're going to be visible in AI answers. And this comes back to Crystal's point. It's a different game. There's different rules and quite honestly, different measurement as well. So really the question here for all of you is when your buyers ask AI for recommendations in whatever category or industry you might be in, does your brand show up? And especially from my perspective, working with customers over the past several months, most teams actually don't know. And this is so new for everyone. It's exactly why we're here today. And it's exactly what HubSpot's AEO tools are designed to actually help with. So on that note, I'm going to transition into the HubSpot product. And when you first open AEO inside of HubSpot, the setup, I think, is intentionally simple. For those that have been around the HubSpot block for a while, you know, ease of use is a big thing with the HubSpot platform. But setup is intentionally simple, and we start by asking for your brand and your domain. And so from here, the tool then starts building context. It's looking at your company, it's looking at competitors, what products and services you're offering, your ideal customer profile. You're not starting with a blank slate. And I think something I found, you know, in talking with marketers over the past several months is one of the hardest things with AEO is really knowing what to measure or even where to start. I mean, there's thousands, probably millions of different variations of prompt tracking that you could put together. But that doesn't mean all of those are useful. So the goal is not to track every possible AI question under the sun. That is not the reason for the season here. But the goal is to track the questions that your buyers are likely asking when they're researching in your category. Okay, and HubSpot's also going to show you know, different variations of your brand as you saw on the previous page. And because AI engines, especially if you're HubSpot, they might, you know, spell the capitalization of the S as lowercase sometimes. So all of those variations we try to track. And those are useful if engines are answering with your full company name, maybe a shortened version, or they're referencing a product. So that initial step helps HubSpot maybe recognize different ways your brand might show up. From there, we're able to select competitors. And HubSpot will sort of pull this list automatically. You're welcome to add, of course, any additional manually. But this gives you a clear view of not only whether your brand is showing up, but whether your competitors are showing up. I think we can all be honest that like we're invisible is pretty bad. But if it's we're invisible and our competitor is getting mentioned every time, that's when the blood pressure starts to rise a little bit. Once we've selected our competitors, we can continue our setup and select our products and ideal customer profile. Again, HubSpot can be able to make some of these recommendations for you. But really, this is helping HubSpot understand what it is you're selling and who you're selling it to. And that context helps generate more relevant prompts that we can start tracking and better content recommendations to address the gaps that Crystal was talking about earlier. I would also add, this is one of those places HubSpot has a real advantage because there's plenty of standalone AEO tools out there that can monitor for prompts, but it doesn't know your business the way that your CRM does. Okay. And so HubSpot has that context of your customers, your deals, your campaigns, your go-to-market motion. And that context makes that measurement perhaps even more relevant. And over time, those recommendations even more useful. So once we're all set up, I will jump into the prompts section of our AEO tool. And simply put, a prompt is a buyer question that HubSpot is tracking across different engines. And for example, a buyer might ask, what is the best platform for mid-size SaaS companies? Okay. What CRM is best for a scaling B2B team? What are the best tools for performing or improving sales coaching? The point is, the prompt should really sound like buyer research. Definitely not something that's overly branded. Definitely not something that maybe only the marketing team would type after a few coffees and like really hyper focused. But they should reflect how your buyers are actually asking for help. And so from this list here of HubSpot generated prompts, based on the business context that we provided, these are sent over time to different answer engines on a recurring basis. Okay, and HubSpot is going to be tracking whether your brand appears, which competitors appear, what sources are cited, and of course, obviously, how that changes over time. Okay, so these are the initial prompts that we're starting with. HubSpot, of course, has the ability to increase additional prompts that you might want to track, or any manual prompts. So maybe there are specific buying questions, let's say, that you're hearing in sales calls or in your customer conversations or part of community forums and discussions. So if your sales team's constantly hearing, how do you compare to, let's take the HubSpot example, how do you compare to Salesforce? That's probably a prompt we might want to track. Or if customers are asking you pretty frequently, what's the best platform for this specific use case, that might be, a great candidate to consider as well. But again, I'll come back to anchor us around the point that we should be choosing prompts where a brand recommendation is likely to appear. Something that's maybe more broad or educational, what is marketing automation? This might not mention any vendors. That might be more of a vendor agnostic style prompt. But a question, again, more pointed, what is the best CRM platform for mid-sized SaaS companies? That's much more likely to produce a list of brands. And that is where AEO becomes measurable. So this tab really becomes your measurement foundation. These are the buyer questions that define ultimately the rest of the dashboard. So I'm going to pop over to our dashboard. We've got our prompts running now. We're tracking all of these different possible buyer questions. And once those prompts are running, HubSpot is actually going to provide a brand visibility score. Okay, now this score is representative of the percent of tracked AI generated answers where your brand is appearing. So if I were to boil that down a little bit more simply, when AI answers the buyer question that you care about and that you're tracking, how often is it that you're included there? And this is a number, this is a metric. Most marketing teams have not had this before. And it's pretty powerful because it answers that, really fuzzy question. Are we showing up in AI? And everyone's like, I don't know. This turns it into something maybe more measurable. Um, what we're able to see, of course, is performance broken down by each of the individual engines. And that matters because visibility might not be consistent across ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity. You might be strong in one engine and almost invisible in another. That's something that can happen. And from a buyer's perspective, basically what that means is two people asking similar questions, similar or the same questions in different places, maybe getting different impressions of your brand. And so, again, as I mentioned earlier, HubSpot allows you to track this over time. So this is something that you can start to bake in maybe more heavily as a full operating motion and not just a one-time report. But if your team is publishing content, coming back to Crystal's point, we're coming full circle here, but your team's publishing content, we're going through this motion of amplifying that content. We're earning those third-party mentions. We're getting included in something like review sites. You can always come back here and see if that visibility is moving. And I think the goal isn't to just know where you stand, but the goal is also to improve it. And so in this case, you'll see this particular example, ChatGPT and Perplexity are looking about the same over the past week for how long I've been tracking this, with maybe some room for opportunity on the Perplexity side of things. So where we compare across over time, something important to track. Equally important to track would be our competitor landscape. This is where we're going to start comparing your visibility to competitors across the same responses. So coming back to what I mentioned earlier, we don't want your competitor showing up every time and you're not in the list at all. This is where we can start to get a sense of, are we showing up more or less often than our competitors? That distinction is becoming increasingly important. And again, delineating between SEO and an AI answer, you're not competing for, position 10 on the homepage. You're competing to be included on a really short list in a much smaller set. And so if the engine is maybe recommending 3 vendors, your competitor is there and you're not there, it's quite possible that competitor is entering the buyer's consideration set before your sales team might even know that there's an opportunity there. Okay. Now, similar to tracking your own visibility over time, HubSpot is going to monitor across various competitors, and this trend line will really help you understand whether competitors maybe are gaining or losing ground. And I think that that's especially useful for marketing leaders because it gives them a way to start connecting activity to some degree of maybe movement. And if your team is making the right investments in content and social PR, partnerships, this is a good way to ask, like, is that actually increasing our visibility where buyers are researching? So I'm going to pause there. At this point, we kind of know the what. We know whether the brand appears. We know how visibility might change by engine. And we have a sense of our competitive landscape. How do we compare to our competitors? But the next question is why? I think it's pretty common to hear, why are we visible? In some answers, maybe missing from others. And that's where our citations come in. So Jeff, you're up, my friend. I'm going to pass this over to you to unpack where these answers are actually coming from.
Sure thing. And thank you, Shane, best manager ever. So
You
right now
flatter
what
me.
we're looking at, yes, of course, got to go for that promo. So right now what we're looking at is the Citations tab. And this is going to be one of the most important parts of the tool because it really explains, why your visibility score is what it is. Answer engines are not just making up things out of thin air, or at the least, this is not the strategy we recommend relying on. They're pulling information from across the web to form an answer. That can include your website, competitor websites, review sites, Reddit, YouTube, LinkedIn, industry publications, so on and so forth. And this view is what helps you understand which sources are being used in the AI generated answers and how often those sources mention you versus your competitors. In classic SEO, your website was often the center of gravity. With AEO, the website still matters, but it's only one part of the picture. Answer engines are looking for a consensus. They're asking, what does the broader web seem to agree is true? And that means visibility is influenced by all the places your market talks about your category, not just the pages you control. So while we still give you that ability to look at, how often your exact website or competitor websites are showing up in those responses, there's also like a lot more areas of the internet that are being factored in here as opposed to that traditional SEO. And so here's where we can see the citation composition itself. So what is the content type that's driving those results and those referrals in the AEO answers? Or is it largely blog pages? Is it a lot of social posts? Is it PR, wikis, homepages, educational? All those different types have their different ways of influencing what's showing up in those results. And second to that is what we're breaking down where cited content is coming from on a channel basis. And this can usually be that aha moment. For many brands, their own website is usually that small percentage of what AI engines cite. And that doesn't mean your website is unimportant. Again, it's still foundational, but it does mean that if all your efforts is going into your own blog, your own landing pages, you may be missing the broader set of sources AI engines use to build confidence. And if we scroll down here a little bit further, we can see like what those domains are that are driving this. So in the HubSpot's perspective, like we put out a ton of content. Obviously, our own domain is going to be a really prime source of where we're being referred from. But we're also looking at other sites like Reddit, YouTube, review sites, and those third-party domains. And so if a competitor is beating you in AI visibility, it may not be up because your homepage is better or their homepage is better. It may be because they have more credible mentions across the sources AI engines are actually citing. Slightly rude of the robots, but still useful to know. And so again, this is not just the list of websites. This is a strategic map of where your market's AI answers are being shaped. If Reddit is showing up here, Reddit may need to become part of your strategy. If YouTube is showing up here, video may need to be part of your strategy. If review sites or industry blogs dominate the citations, then your third-party presence may be a major lever. And this is where AEO really expands the marketing conversations. Not just publish more blog posts, it is where does AI look for trust in our category? Where are competitors being mentioned? Which sources influence the answers our buyers are reading? And where do we need to show up next? So at the end of the day, citations help us diagnose that visibility gap, but diagnosis alone is not enough. Knowing you have a gap is helpful. Knowing how to close it is where real value starts. And that brings us to recommendations. I know this is going to address, I think, a lot of the points we've seen in the Q&A so far, which is, hey, this is all great to know. What do I actually do about it? And I think this is really where that differentiator comes into play with our solution here. So again, many tools can tell you where you're visible, not visible, then leave you with the marketing equivalent of good luck out there. So HubSpot goes further by turning visibility gaps into prioritized recommendations. So here, HubSpot's analyzing the prompts you're tracking, the competitors appearing in those answers, and the sources being cited. Then it recommends actions you can take to improve visibility. You can see recommendations grouped into different buckets, such as owned content, social amplification, and outreach. And that structures matter because different visibility gaps require different actions. Sometimes you need to create or optimize content on your own site. Sometimes you need to amplify your perspective on social channels. Sometimes you need to pursue those third-party motions, partnerships, or industry publications. And this is where we can look at the different types of content that we want to prioritize here and then start working through. So we'll start with owned content. So owned content is content you control, typically your blog, website, landing pages, or resource center. And so when I open up a recommendation here, example here being something like a blog post or a published piece of content on our website, HubSpot gives me a suggested content idea. So a title, a summary, who the target audience is, keywords, and secondary keywords with that. And this is important because we don't want the recommendation to be generic. We want it to tie to a visibility gap from the prompts that we are tracking. And so from there, we can actually give ourselves some citations for what's driving these recommendations. This helps answer the very fair question, why is HubSpot telling me to create this? You can see the associated prompts, the recent visibility, and the sources or domains that are influencing the recommendation. And that transparency is important. We do not want AI vaguely waving its hands and saying, trust me, bro, write a blog. We want to understand the logic. And so we even get to the point of being able to generate that blog post right from here, leveraging that Breeze AI assistant. So taking that one step further and actually helping you craft the content as a whole, rather than just giving you that like general guide for how to go about doing it. And this isn't meant to like remove the marketer from the process. We don't want the copy, paste, publish, and sprint into the sunset. The goal is to accelerate the research and drafting process. So HubSpot can use your brand voice, your ICP context, the recommendation details, and relevant source material to produce a draft that your team can review, edit, improve, and publish. Human expertise still matters. And in fact, it matters now more than ever because the internet does not need more generic content. It needs specific, helpful, credible content that can actually answer the buyer's question. And if you are using HubSpot's native tools for managing this, like we can go in, generate that blog, as well as add additional writing samples to this so that it's actually pulling from the way that your organization speaks and not just like producing that general like AI slop that we see across the internet. And this also lets us measure the impact here. So we can track specific URLs within this. If it is an external blog post or something that's not necessarily being managed directly in HubSpot's blogging, we're trying to give you that broad visibility into what's working and what's not working, and then how that can drive impact from there. So now I want to move on to social amplification. So this is where AEO gets especially interesting because as we saw in Citations, AI engines are not only looking at your website, they're looking across the web for consensus. So HubSpot may recommend creating or amplifying content on channels like Reddit, LinkedIn, depending on what is influencing answers in your category. So here we can see, similar to how we saw with blog posts, a summary of the type of content we should be putting out onto which specific platforms, and then the citations here around what's driving that recommendation. I think Reddit is a great one to really hone in on here because we're seeing that Reddit is really becoming that like one of those primary sources that myself may look at when I'm researching trip recommendations or where to go when I'm in a new city, but also what the AI tools are using, just given like the general breadth of human conversation that's happening in that area. And it's really becoming a meaningful source. And an important note is the goal is not to barge into Reddit sounding like a corporate brochure or wearing a fake mustache. That will not go well. The goal is to be genuinely helpful, answer the question, add expertise, disclose appropriately, and be useful. And Reddit can help you identify where those conversations are happening and make it easier to engage. Again, the value is not here's the recommendation, the value is the workflow. Find the conversation, understand why it matters, create a response, and track whether the channel contributes to visibility and downstream impact. And then the final one we want to call out here is outreach. So this is where HubSpot may recommend third-party sites, publication partners, or other domains where a brand could benefit from being included. In the SEO world, teams would have thought about this as backlinks for a long time. And in the AEO world, the logic evolves. It's not only about link equity, but whether trusted third-party sources are helping answer engines understand that your brand is relevant for a particular buyer question. So here, HubSpot gives us a suggested source and context for why it matters. This could become part of your PR strategy, partner strategy, analyst relations, review generation, or just content collaboration plan. And because this lives in HubSpot, the work can connect back to the CRM. You assign recommendations, coordinate next steps, and connect activity to outcomes. This is really important because AEO is cross-functional. It's not just an SEO person in a corner trying to decode the robots. It touches content, social, community PR, product marketing, demand gen, and sales. This recommendation helps turn that from a vague initiative into a prioritized action plan. And we'll see ways for your team to go in, assign who's responsible. Shane's normally the one giving me work, but I'll give him some work today. And then whether or not it's in progress or not here. So really like a collaboration tool for internal teams to look at and understand how we're putting these recommendations into action. So to bring this together, HubSpot's AEO tools help you answer 4 big questions. First, why are we showing up in AI answers? That's the brand visibility score. Second, how do we compare to competitors? That is share of voice and competitor visibility. Third, why are we showing up or not showing up at all? That's citations. And fourth, what do I do now? And that's recommendations. The bigger point is that AEO is not just a reporting exercise, it is a new growth motion. Your buyers are already using AI to research problems, compare options, and build shortlists. So the opportunity for marketers is to understand how these answers are being formed and then build a strategy to show up there consistently. So we make that possible inside the same platform where your content, campaigns, CRM, automation, and reporting already live. And that's what makes this powerful. So you can move from visibility to action without constantly switching tools or context. So hope this was really helpful for everybody. I pass it back to you, Crystal.
All right. All right. Hopefully everybody can see my screen okay. It's not the main thing that people always ask in Zoom, the number one thing, right? All right. So you've seen the demo, you have a sense of how we think about AEO, but why are we the ones doing this? So we're the ones that brought you inbound when the old playbook was buy list and cold call, but we've recognized the shift in the market. And once again, we're the ones that are bringing you the playbook for how to adapt and succeed. But we're not just bringing you a methodology from a theory. We actually built this technology and tested it on ourselves, so we know it works. We tracked how HubSpot showed up across every major answer engine, and we tested what content AI actually cites. And the result is a 1,850% increase in qualified leads from AI channels, 433% improvement in citations, and 3 times better conversion from AI referred traffic. This is 3 times that the discovery channel has shifted for us, inbound, SEO, and now AI, and 3 times that HubSpot saw it first, proved the playbook, and then built the tools so that you can do that. We drink our own champagne. We are doing this on ourselves, and it makes a huge difference. We're also seeing that customers are seeing big results too. So let me show you what this looks like for a real company. So Fresha is a booking platform for salons and beauty professionals, and it's used by over 100,000 businesses. Their buyers had stopped finding them on Google. They were starting to ask ChatGPT and Gemini which booking software that they should trust, where to find the right salons. And Fresha didn't have any idea how to show up into those answers or if it was even showing up at all. And so what they did is they used HubSpot AEO to track the best questions that their buyers are asking. Things like best salon booking software and book beauty treatments near me. And so they were doing this across every major answer engine, and they could see where they appeared and where competitors appeared instead and where the gaps are. And so the shift for them was moving from watching their AI mentions to actually earning them. And so today, Fresha ranks first on all 8 of the AI platforms that they track, with a brand visibility score of 68%, the top in their category. And because those buyers arrive already convinced, the leads come in warmer. And as their VP of Revenue of Ops puts it, every salon owner who asks an AI which platform to trust now gets the right answer, and they arrive already sold and ready to start booking. And so here's the second example, which I want to call out the timing on this one. So Sandler is a sales training organization, and this quote is from their marketing director, Emily Davidson. And in a matter of weeks, they drove roughly 8,000 new website visitors and lifted their brand visibility score by 2 points. And they did it during one of their slowest months of the year. That last part makes a big difference because the visibility itself created the traffic, and that traffic is now feeding their retargeting and their conversion pipeline. And so when you can show up in AI answers consistently, you're not just getting found, you're getting found by people who are ready to act, ready to put down a credit card, ready to sign up, even if it's a quiet month. And so let's talk about some best practices. First, I saw this was a question in the chat. Where should we start? And these are useful whether or not wherever you're thinking about AEO. So when you're creating content, you want to answer real questions. You want to write the way that buyers are asking, not how you would just put keywords together. And so prompts are around 27 words. And so a page titled CRM pricing is not going to be as useful as somebody who puts in a whole question. How much does CRM cost for a 10-person sales team? Having a full answer, the way people actually talk is going to make a difference. Next, you want to earn outside mentions. So answer engines weigh what others say about you just as much as what you say about you. But a founder answering questions in Reddit thread or an industry roundup will count more towards visibility. This is similar to how we used to think about SEO, in that having outside mentions coming in makes a difference. But in this case, those outside mentions are being tracked and mentioned by AEO. So instead of them coming into your website, they're being found by answer engines. And then you want to also have great structure for those answer engines. You want clear headings, short summaries, and schema markup that help read and quote you accurately. And sometimes going back to those old pieces of content and just changing the structure of it will help you be found in those answer engines as well. And so that's, oh, I'm ahead of myself here. I love it when that happens. And so you can re-rank in those answer engines just by cleaning up what you already have, which will save you a lot of time in the end. And then you want to check this on a regular cadence. So every time one of these models updates, the visibility may shift. And so you want to check this regularly. This is why we always have these new recommendations on what kinds of questions are being asked and what people are responding to. And so you want to watch how that changes month to month. And the same way you used to do with keyword tracking. And you want to update your material based on what you're seeing. So that's we're starting kind of to wrap up here. But before we do that, there's a couple of things that I want to let you know about. First of all, if you want to be certified in AEO, we have 2 new certifications. They're live and free to take, and we're going to drop that link into the chat. Also, we have small group coaching. If you want to get in on this and have a HubSpot Academy professor really walk you through how to do this in your own portals, we have the ability for you to sign up and take those small group coaching courses. And so you can visit that link that we're going to drop into the chat there. And we're going to move to Q&A in a second, but I want to talk a little bit about what you're actually going to do about this. And so we've talked about what AEO is, how accurately your brand is appearing in AI-generated answers. And so just like SEO was about ranking and search results, AEO is about being part of the answer. SEO is your website, but AEO is your entire presence across the web. And so let's talk about some Q&A that came in. I'm going to answer the first question, which was about credits and when blog posts, if you're generating a blog post from a recommendation. So it does take tokens, it takes credits. When you generate a blog post from a recommendation, it will cost 1,000 credits per blog post, which is about $10 in the US. And if that seems steep, it kind of did to me, to be honest, at first when I saw that. But then when I started to understand what you're actually getting for that, it makes a lot more sense. So that price covers the entire workflow. It's not just generating a blog post. You could, in theory, take one of those questions and go into Breeze or go into Claude or ChatGPT and say, write me a blog post from this. You can do that. But what it's not going to get you is everything else on the back end. So what's happening is that content agent is going to research your recommendation. It's going to pull in your brand voice, your ideal customer profile, and your products. It's going to run SEMrush keyword data, which is something I saw somebody asked also in the chat. It's going to check your competitors and their citations. It's going to format it for AEO, and it will verify all those links before delivering it. And so what comes back to you is really close to a final draft. And so this is going to beat a generic prompt every single time because the difference is context. HubSpot already knows your business, your competitors, your products, your brand voice, and your citation data. And it's going to build all of that in automatically. And so you could write the post elsewhere from a recommendation, but then the research briefing and the quality checks are going to be on you. And so I'm going to open this up. I'm going to stop sharing here. We're just going to go to us. And we've got a bunch of other questions in the Q&A, and I'm going to let Jeff and Shane jump on in.
Sure. So I'll start with one of the first questions I marked to maybe take live here is around LLMs and when they have access to content getting published. Um, some are maybe limited in kind of what they scrape or comb, and then others kind of search the web for new stuff. And so the question was around how soon will AI see my new content once it is published? And this is a tricky one to answer, I think, just because there is no universal across, the different engines. There's no universal SLA on like, okay, you've published new content and it's going to be ingested by ChatGPT in the next 24 to 72 hours. So what's really happening behind the scenes, and I think hopefully we conveyed this today, is HubSpot is making informed recommendations based on what it's seeing with those prompts running over time. So you'll be able to have the tools at your fingertips and your disposal to see if that visibility is changing. And HubSpot will also continue to surface any gaps in that visibility too. So knowing that there's no standard SLA on when the content is ingested, and again, each engine is a little bit different in that sense. Um, that's probably the best thing I'd recommend is the continuous monitoring of your visibility to make sure that you are seeing a trend in the right direction. I guess kind of jumping around to questions. There was another one on if you're selling toothpaste, why would AEO consider Crest, all, capital C, Crest, lowercase, and Crest, C, all caps, to be three different products? Isn't it smarter than that? The answer for that one is yes. It's maybe less about because I think the model does understand that, but what HubSpot's AEO is doing is measurement and maybe not just interpretation. So in terms of brand visibility scoring, the tool is looking for the exact brand variations that you configure. And those variations are case sensitive because something like capitalization can materially change meaning for some brands. Look at HubSpot, we have the S capitalized. So it's maybe less about AI being unable to understand the term, more about maybe avoiding false positives and keeping the scoring kind of explainable. Jeff, Crystal, you want to take a question?
I'm looking through our list here. We had one from Elizabeth that around like the simplest list of how to start using and monitoring the AEO tool. And I know Crystal has provided some like great resources for getting started there, just as a means of like an offline resource. But I think to answer this kind of more directly in the chat here, it really comes down to a bit of an it depends answer. I think for this, as it stands right now, like how much has your team currently invested in like content marketing and content strategy? Like what owned content do you have already that the AE tool can look at and, track as it relates to how that's really contributing to the overall response from these answer engines. Because we find that we are showing up well, but there is a bit of a gap there for how people are actually ending up at our website and clicking through and booking demos or starting trials, whatever that may be. Maybe that informs us of a better means to start creating more organic content. Likewise, we can see, do we have a lot of partner relationships with third parties or referral links? So how can I go about making sure to invest in that channel more? So the answer here is that really just depends on like where we've invested the most time right now, making ourselves visible in the world. When I go on the internet and I search your brand, even just from a general SEO's perspective, what shows up, what's available there. So it's trying to identify those low-hanging fruit, which thankfully HubSpot provides those recommendations on for where those quick wins available. And if you're already using HubSpot, great, you have a lot of tools at your disposal for starting to actually deploy that content and in turn measure it as well and contrast it with the AEO result.
Mm-hmm. This question I think came in twice. I don't know if it was from the same person, but if it was, the question is around if you had to give the simplest list of how to start using and monitoring in the AEO tool, what would the order of operations be? And I walked through this at the beginning. I'm not sure if this person maybe was on or joined late, but uh, simple answer, HubSpot has a really intuitive kind of guided flow to getting started with AEO. And the very first step is quite simple. It's just putting in your domain. And from there, HubSpot is going to do a lot of the legwork to comb your site, understand your landscape, who your competitors are, and then, of course, all of the context in CRM. So going through that kind of guided flow gives you a really nice foundation to start from. And kind of each step of the way, you are able to make adjustments and make edits, of course. And even after that initial setup, you're always welcome to go back and do that. But the short and simple version is just the guided flow in HubSpot, which at the beginning, I think I walked through is like four, maybe very simple steps. Crystal, this one might be for you. Is there a class for completing the brand section? The brand knowledge section is really deep. As I understand it, it's helpful to have completed this for AEO. I think the first thing was, Crystal, you did already mention small group coaching, but I don't know if you have something maybe more specific that the Academy offers.
I don't have there's not a specific class for that. And that is actually something that you're probably going to know best, to be honest, because it's everything about your brand. I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about in the brand section. I'm assuming it might be related to context. So for example, on the sidebar, there should be at the bottom with Breeze content, it should be a place for where you can add context to it. And that's where you can put your buyer personas and your ideal customer profile. And in your settings under AI, you can also get to this. And that's where you can put in information about your products, who your business is, all of your brand details. We don't have a specific class on that, but I believe that in the AEO certifications, we do touch on some of that as well. I have a couple others I was going to answer in
Okay.
here. One of them is limiting access to the setup in the AEO tab so that they can't be edited randomly. You do that in your settings, and there should be ways that only certain people that are administrators can access that. If for some reason you're finding that that's not the case, then definitely use the feedback form. Our engineers look at all those feedback forms when they come in, and they are working to try to solve those kinds of problems pretty quickly. So please make sure that you just flag that as something that you would like to see if that's the case. And then on the tips for cleaning up or refreshing existing content, that was a question that came in about that. So a couple things on that. So when you're thinking about developing your content or restructuring your content, clear headings, that's one of the big things. Use, that bold, clear headings. Short summaries, think listicle kind of style actually works fairly well. And schema markup, where it's actually put into your headers on the backside in your HTML. There is a place in your templates in HubSpot, for example, to add schema markup. You can even ask Breeze or any of the answer engines to help you develop schema markup for your content. It will develop it for you. I do this all the time because it's just easier. The other thing that you should do is go to those answer engines and ask it questions and then look at what it's referencing, because they should have links to the places where they're getting their information. And go look at that type of content, see the kind of content and how it's referencing it. Look at the Google overviews and see the kinds of answers it's responding. The way that it's responding is similar to the way that you need to structure your content. So big chunks, small chunks of information, and really clear headings, and the schema markup. Jeff and Shane, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add to that.
No, I think you nailed that.
Yeah.
And time-wise, we've got 5 minutes and a few other questions in here. One was around, is it better to stick to just 10 competitors rather than the more the merrier? And this is where, HubSpot will do that initial list generation. And it might give you 10, depending on how crowded your space is or how competitive the industry that you're in might be. That number could be higher, could be lower. It's really going to comb through the landscape and identify kind of the top competitors. As with anything AI, uh, trust but verify. If something is not accurate, you don't have to stick with it, or if something is not helpful or relevant, you also don't have to stick with it. And this is where there's merit and benefit to also having that human review and having that manual control as well. So if 10 competitors is focused enough for you and you know that those are the big players in your space, maybe 10 is what you stick with. If it's a smaller list than that, also great, more power to you. And if it's a larger list than that, that's great. I think it really depends what it is you'd be looking to kind of take away from it. But so this is kind of an it depends answer, which I know is not, always the best kind of answer, but that would be my initial recommendation. We've got two other questions in here, and just 4 minutes left. One is how AEO and AI can help on marketing campaigns, which I think we've hopefully covered, or
Yeah.
at least sit on a couple times today. But the boiled down TLDR version is HubSpot is obviously making content recommendations for you based on visibility gaps in those prompt responses from the answer engines. So those recommendations can, right from within HubSpot, be turned into content for you then to, again, we're coming full circle in the final 3 minutes here, but coming back to Crystal's earlier point about the loop and marketing and amplifying the
Mhm.
message. So, yes, HubSpot's giving you the recommendations. That's through our AEO tool. We're also giving you the opportunity to take that recommendation and action it right into something that you can broadcast across, all different channels.
The other thing too is that when you create a blog in the recommendations section, you can tag that with your campaign. So it
Yes.
will automatically track that as part of your campaigns when you do that. All right, so we are at time. I want to say thank you all for coming and asking all of these great questions. As you leave today, there will be a feedback survey. We take all feedback, good, bad, ugly, and we action that to try to make our content better than ever. So please, we'd love to hear what you have to say about how this went for you today and how you're thinking about AEO moving forward. You will also receive the deck and the recording afterwards as well. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.